Hey everybody, Lauren Doyle here, your favorite intuition and habits mentor, teacher, and coach. And today I want to talk to you quickly about boundaries. So one of the things that comes up a ton with people is boundaries. And the interesting thing about boundaries is that most people that have boundaries issues don't think that they have boundaries issues because they're able to say no to certain things that they like or dislike and are quite clear about that. But it shows up in other ways in their life. And so it's one of those things where, like, when you peel back the layers, they recognize it within themselves, but they don't necessarily recognize that it is the core of what their issues are. So a lot of times, especially working with people with habits, which again relates to the intuitive part like we talked about, because your discipline is very, very important as far as getting your life into alignment. So what happens with boundaries? People will experience serious physical issues. So whether that be weight, so a lot of times it's weight related. Other times it's sleep related. Other times it's, some other negative thing that they've kind of incorporated into their life. But those two seem to be the biggest when it comes to boundaries, right? So what happens? They keep saying yes. So you might recognize this within yourself. You keep saying yes to things that you know you shouldn't. So what happens is you'll feel yourself going, I know I shouldn't say yes to this, but I can't help myself. So it's like any other habit. It's a habit that you say yes, and you say yes, and you say yes, even though you know you should say no. So it's not any different from the person who, is eating too many candy bars or whatever, like little snack bars, or eating too many chips. Like, they know they shouldn't have any more chips, but they can't help it. They just keep eating them. And it's the same thing with these boundaries. So it's the same kind of pattern. It just shows up in a different way. So you keep saying yes, even though you hear in yourself that you should say no. And what ends up happening is it starts this cascade of all these things. So they say yes when they know that they should say no. And they overcommit themselves to things that maybe aren't even necessarily what they want to do. It's actually inhibitory, even though they think that they're doing it because they don't want to miss any opportunities. It's actually inhibitory to the opportunities they actually want to have. But it also affects relationships. So then what happens is you end up saying yes to things that you know you should say no to, and then you end up pushing off commitments that you've already made that are usually personal. So they're the commitments to yourself, and then the commitments to your loved ones. So that's being friends and family or whatever. And so it becomes this vicious cycle, right? Because then you're under all this stress, and then the stress leads you to do things that are usually self-destructive, even though you may not see them as self-destructive. So those things could be, however you deal with stress, right? Like, it could be overeating, it could be lack of sleep, it could be anger issues. So you deal with this. It could even be smoking, whatever. You develop a negative somehow to cope with the stress of your overcommitment that comes from your lack of boundaries. And then on top of that, you don't get any other outlet for that stress because you now have created more stress in the areas of your life that would help you manage that. Again, in your personal peace, right? Because you've let go of the commitment to yourself and to your loved ones. So now your loved ones are upset with you. That creates more guilt, which causes more stress, and on. It feeds this thing on and on and on. So it's a big, ugly monster. So what do you do, right? So the first thing is being present. So noticing within yourself that you are saying yes in a moment where you feel, you get that, like I said, it kind of like is a heavier feeling, or like a, you know, what I say is like a heavier feeling or a darker feeling, knowing that you're saying yes when you know you should say no. And when you get more practice, and linking this back to intuitive development, when you get more practiced at choosing what feels light and bright is always right versus what feels heavier and harder, like pushing, or like that weakness, you feel a weakness when you do it, that's another sign that you should not. So if you feel a strength when you do it, that's right. When you feel a weakness when you do it, you should not. So becoming present enough to notice when you're saying yes, when you can feel you should say no. That's the key. If you can start becoming present in that moment, you can stop yourself, pause for a second, and make a choice then. And that will actually redirect the whole cascade and stop the whole thing from happening. The first time you do it, it's going to be super hard. So know that. But then each time you do it afterwards, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And when you start stepping into that strength of self that it takes to create those boundaries, guess what? The opportunities that you do want to have, that are the actual true opportunities, will present to you, and you will have the time to be able to take them. So with that, I know it's a long video today, but I will leave you, and I'll see you next time.